Like if Ewoks were robots, they would be Robo-Bears. Welcome everyone to this BTB short, the state of Star Wars, where four self-professed Star Wars nerds talk about, well, Star Wars. My name is Matt Smith. I'm joined by Brian Larson.
Hello.
New to the group, we're joined by Brad Riverdal,
Hello.
and the
Thanks for having me.
T, yeah, for sure, and the T in BTB is Tim Larson.
Oh, good to be here. Good to be here and see your faces. Let's talk Star Wars.
Yeah, we are missing Aaron Lashbrook, who joined us the last few episodes. He had a scheduling conflict tonight. I'm sure he'll be back at some point, but we're just going to roll with the four of us. So before we get going here, a couple of just housekeeping things. We are part of the SPDM Podcast Network. You can check out our main cast, the BTB Movie Club, along with a ton of other great podcasts wherever you listen and download your podcasts. And obviously, we just real quick spoiler warning: we are talking about Star Wars, past, present, future, talking about all the different things, characters, plots, locations, et cetera, et cetera. So this is your warning. We're obviously going to spoil stuff. So how's everybody doing? We haven't recorded in a while.
Mhm.
Everybody doing okay?
Yeah.
Been
Yeah.
a hot minute.
Doing well.
So before we get into this episode, we're going to talk more about the TV side of Star Wars today. I just wanted to touch on this really quick. We were recording this on March 4th of 2025, and there's been some weird stuff about Kathleen Kennedy in the news. I don't know if
Yep.
anybody has seen this. And
Hmm.
so I figured, touch on that really quick. Every legitimate report I've read is that she is not retiring.
Right.
They're internally talking about some succession type things because she's at some point not going to be there. And some names were thrown around. How's everybody on Kathleen Kennedy? We're okay with Kathleen, right? She's done a pretty good job.
I mean, Solo.
Okay. I mean, you can't bat 1,000, Tim.
Her resume is pretty ridiculous if you look at it.
Yeah.
if she were to retire tomorrow and you look at the movies that she did, you're like, wow. I
Yeah.
mean, like I think she's got like 20 or 25 of the top grossing 100 films of all time she was involved in. So
Yikes.
And it's
Yeah.
it's
you're
not
gonna,
like she came in when George Lucas left, right? I mean, she was already there
Right.
and just kind of she's carrying the torch. So, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
all of the world should be good with Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, and she even said she's gonna die making movies. Like that was one of the quotes that she had in one of the most recent interviews. So she's not retiring. She realizes that she's not gonna be able to do this forever. And she was handpicked by George supposedly
Right.
to do
Mhm.
it. So yeah, it would be interesting to see like a Dave Filoni or one of those guys kind of do what she does. I think that would be really interesting.
I don't want to see Feige get it though. Kevin Feige from
Yeah,
Marvel.
yeah,
It needs to be a Filoni or somebody who's a lot more involved in the Star Wars world, in my
for,
opinion.
yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. So.
Isn't he kind of on his way out anyway? Like he had the okay to do a movie or two, and then that's been canceled.
Who's that? Dave
Feige,
Filoni? Oh,
Filoni,
Feige.
Yep, Feige.
Feige, the Marvel guy.
Yeah. I don't know. But I agree with Brian. I think, you're good at what you're good at. I think he's been good for the Marvel universe, but
Yeah.
let the people who have been kind of sweating and tearing and blooding, that I don't know where I was going with that, but in the Star Wars universe, let them do it.
Mm.
I think they're
Yeah, I
going to
think
let Dave Filoni get a little more live action production under his belt because he's still kind of mainly known for animated stuff for the most part. Um, and once the training wheels are off, that would be my bet. But
Yeah.
yeah, Feige's still doing, he was Captain America Brave New World. I don't see him involved though in Thunderbolts, but the Daredevil series that's coming out actually tonight. And
Oh yeah.
he was part of the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. So yeah, he's still involved in a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. It was kind of current event type thing. I thought that was an interesting little blurb and people jumping on rumors and stuff, which is typical of that
On
industry.
the
But
internet?
what? All right. So we're here to talk a little bit about Star Wars TV. So I'm going to start with what I think maybe is the easy question. Maybe it's the loaded question, but what has been our what has been your favorite TV series that has come out. It could be go all the way back to, you know, like original Clone Wars stuff or other things, but what has been your favorite and why? I'm just gonna go around just to make it easier on everybody. I'm just gonna start with Tim because he's in my top corner here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer is Mandalorian. When that first season came out, it was, there's all the memes on Favreau broke his back by carrying the Star Wars universe, right? After a couple of movies hadn't done so well. I mean, that story is really compelling. Every episode is really good. The only thing in that first season for me is every episode seems to be like I went to another planet and somebody has an issue and he's got to help this guy before he can get help to go back to fix a ship or whatever. I mean, it was kind of formula driven for quite a few episodes, but the big theme and the big story I think is fantastic. And I think the other two seasons don't let down. I think they even kind of get a little better at some points. So I think it's Mandalorian. And then Brian and I were talking about this after the last meeting that my second favorite would be Andor, and that Brian wasn't as big a fan of Andor. And I think we both rewatched that recently. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So I'll let him tell you what his was, and then he and I can react to that after we get through his part of that.
Sure, sure. So go ahead, Brian.
I have to agree. Like, if I want to go absolute favorite, Mandalorian, but I would also throw in Bad Batch, the
Hmm.
cartoon. I just there's something about that I love. Just those characters, and they do a good story, and then they add Omega in there, the last clone, who is also female. It's just this very well written and sticks to the Star Wars mythos so well. I did enjoy it. I did rewatch Andor, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you know how around I think it's episode 7 he gets arrested.
Hmm.
There's more episodes.
Oh,
I had not
are there?
watched it all. So when I went back and rewatched it, I was like, this explains why. I'm like, I literally thought they arrested him and then, okay, we're going to wait for season 2, I guess.
Ah,
I
I
don't
think
know what
it gets
happened.
better from there too.
yeah, for
It
That's
really
where
sure.
does.
yeah, it's a slow burn up until that point.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
you and I were texting, and I was like, I don't know, after the prison break, it's really good. You're just like, yeah, my cousin's drunk. He doesn't know
Yep.
what he's talking
Yeah.
about.
So,
Okay.
yep. It became a lot better of a show after you watched it.
That makes sense. That makes
We,
sense.
we got golems in it. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
there's so many
Yeah.
great things that happened.
Yeah.
So it didn't go into my favorite slot, but it did get a lot better because it's a lot of people talk about Andor being so good and great and this, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe you
The
guys
speech his
know
mom does
something
at
I
the
know.
end, and
Hmm.
you didn't see
Hmm.
any of that before.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
So yeah,
All right.
You guys know the end of that, what the original audio was, right?
I do, but because you told me.
Go
I
for
do
it.
Yeah.
not.
It was F the Empire, and it wasn't the censored version of that.
Oh,
And
Nice.
I
When she
and
says
she
fight the Empire.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she said it on set, and it was recorded, and they were going to roll with it, and they had to change it in post. But like, if you read her lips, it's pretty much
Nice.
confirmed.
Nice. Yeah, I would imagine Disney might have had a little bit of a problem with the F word being
Yeah,
dropped in one of their shows.
Yeah.
yeah, right at the very end.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
here's the good thing about knowing this conversation was coming up and Brian and I talking about this is I rewatched Obi-Wan Kenobi also, and I liked that a lot better the second time around as well. I mean, I liked it the first time, but the theme of the way that Obi-Wan knows how aggressive Darth Vader is and uses it against him when he's weak is pretty cool.
What about you, Brad? What's been your favorite TV?
I'll just say right off the bat, Tim knows this more than anybody. I am a ridiculous uber fan of Star Wars. There's very little that I don't like, or at least I
That's fair.
can't at least find enjoyment in. There's only one series I've never watched, animated series Resistance. Never saw that one. Watched like half an episode, and someone, literally a very good friend that's on par or more of a Star Wars fan than I am, is like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't bother. Um, I think my favorite to watch is probably Mandalorian. and it's because it's so varied, like the episode to episode. And I kind of looked at it as almost like the old Incredible Hulk shows,
Mm.
where like he goes to one town, solves a
Right.
problem, then moves on,
Yeah.
or like Highway to Heaven, if you want, like stuff like that, where it's
Well,
like
Let's go
Highway to
back to Hulk.
Heaven.
Let's go back to
each,
Hulk.
yeah,
Who thought
each
we'd get a
episode,
Highway to Heaven reference today?
but like each episode is self-contained. Like he goes
Sure.
into a place, but and then they're all pieced together. But like for all of the deep cut stuff from
Yeah.
Mandalorian, that's the most fun to watch. My favorite is Obi-Wan.
Hmm.
And a lot of people dig on that because of they get away from the story between Vader and Obi-Wan, which is the crux of it, and they kind of go off to Leia and the whole
Yeah.
rescue plot and stuff. But that's the most fun one, or enjoyable, I should say, start to
Yeah.
finish for me.
Yeah, you guys talking about the Mandalorian being sort of, I guess, like a serial, right? Is that what they used to call it? Kind of. I think it really um, took from like the old Western serial type things. That's why I always felt like Mandalorian was like a Western. Like
Like Gunsmoke.
yeah,
For
here's this
sure.
guy walking into town with his guns, and he's gonna, like you said, solve the problem, rescue the damsel, whatever it is. So I really liked Mandalorian is I don't know if I have a favorite. Brad, I'm not as probably big of a nut as you, but I also in that same vein, there's very few things of Star Wars I don't like. Um, I'll pretty much watch anything. I'm with you. I've never seen Resistance, but like Rebels, I loved Rebels. I
Hmm.
love the Clone Wars. I liked the no dialogue Clone Wars on Cartoon Network by
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
Gendy Tartakovsky.
Yeah, Tartakovsky.
Yeah,
Thank you.
the micro series, yeah.
That was great. I actually, so I really liked Ahsoka. I know people are torn on Ahsoka.
Mhm.
I am a Thrawn fan, like going back to the Zahn trilogy and the Rebel stuff and any kind of like media that has Thrawn in it. I've always been a fan. The new stuff's pretty good too, that Zahn did, and his connection to Anakin and all this other stuff. So I really liked Ahsoka for the fan service. They brought back Hayden. They did Thrawn. They tried to connect it all together. Also liked Obi-Wan a lot. I think to your point, I know they went off on some tangents, but I think if you watched 6 straight episodes of Obi-Wan and Vader, it probably would have gotten stale. They needed to mix it up a little bit, give it a
Yep.
little bit of a thing. I liked Clone Wars. I like Bad Batch, Ryan. The last season, I feel like they dragged it out a little bit. I feel like they could have probably just ended it. They could have done a couple more episodes in the previous season and could have probably figured it out. I don't know, maybe not, but I kind of lost interest in it as it ended. But I agree with you. It's a good show. I like the characters. I hope we see some more of that. But good stuff. Yeah. And like I said, I like all the stuff, all the shows. So there's so after we talked last time, I did rewatch Andor,
Mhm.
season 1. And now season two's out in
All of
April.
it? You watched all the
Yes, I
episodes?
did.
Okay.
I watched all of it. I binged it. It was crazy. I think we were on, it's been a long time since we recorded. Were we on winter break from school? I think we were. So
I think you're on
come,
Christmas break. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Christmas break. And so I think I just literally sat and watched Andor for like 10 straight hours. It was ridiculous.
Have you
Um,
guys seen the release schedule for season two?
it's like, no, I've seen it. I don't remember it. You probably
It's
know.
crazy. They just released it the other day. It's going to be 3 episodes, uh, essentially a day per week. So you're going to get three more the next week, three more the next week, and then I think three more.
That's
So it's
crazy.
going to be like there must be a reason. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes more sense that way. It flows better, like through separate arcs,
Oh
but
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
that's a lot of content.
So this is interesting because this is one of those stories where you know where it ends for sure.
Right.
And you know how much time you have until it ends because, he's got to show up in Rogue One. So do they try and stretch that into 2 more seasons, or do they just do one more season?
I think this is it.
Yeah.
Sorry, muted myself there. Can you guys hear me again?
Yeah.
I hit the space bar. We could have all kinds of
Oh
trouble
no.
here.
Jeez. We
It
might
was
as
an
well just scrap
incidental
the whole
space
thing.
bar. But what I was saying is you could either do 2 seasons to try to get to that spot or do one season. And then probably when they did that, they're like, "Oh, we should throw this in there and throw that in there." So I could see why that second season would get bigger as they're writing it.
Yeah.
Well, what is the timeline between the end of Andor and the begin in Rogue One? I mean, do you?
Well, I don't have
I'm
years, but I
asking
mean,
you, like
oh,
Brad, do you know,
yeah.
like real time, not or not? I shouldn't say real time, but
Well, I mean, Rogue One takes you literally right up to the opening seconds of A New Hope. So,
right. I know.
um,
I meant the
like how
different
many
when
years does
Andor,
Andor
yeah,
take place over?
because
So
he seems like he's much older. See, in Rogue One than he is in the Andor
Hmm.
miniseries.
according to the interwebs, Andor is 5 years before Rogue
Okay.
One. That's season one, obviously. So I don't know if they're gonna time jump or like Tim said, are they gonna talk themselves into, hey, we still got a couple years before Rogue
Hmm.
One. Maybe we could do something else. I guess it depends on how the season ends.
It's
Yeah.
funny that you guys mentioned you didn't watch the rest of the episodes because the number one thing I heard in the Star Wars fan community, hands down, was like, I don't know, man. I watched Andor, but it's just too slow. Like, like, well, how far did you get? Like, oh, I got up to like episode 3, and then I just kind of, I'm like, it's like a
Don't do
movie
that.
from the 70s.
Right.
It's like it really demands your attention. It's a slow burn, and then like it gets crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
fun.
That's
Yeah.
like watching the first 12 minutes of A New Hope and going,
Yeah.
eh.
This is this space.
So what I
Um,
was thinking was, did you just look that up, man, and come up with that 5 years, or did you have
I
that?
did. The
Do
internet's
you
a
have notes
wonderful
like
place.
prepared for? Okay.
I do have
I
notes
was just
prepared.
thinking Obi-Wan is supposed to be just before Andor happens. I've got a chronological order of all the TV shows or all the shows and movies. So that's all the notes I have, by the way. I'm not more prepared than that. But Obi-Wan's supposed to happen right before that, and Leia's already alive and 10 years old. And as she gets those plans at the beginning of A New Hope, she's not that old, right? So,
I think the twins are they supposed to be 19 in A New Hope?
Hmm. Yep.
yeah,
So you can kind of do the math. I believe Obi-Wan's
right.
9 years before A New Hope, which would make sense because she's 10. So I'm very good at math, Brian.
And and
10 + 9,
they're
I could do that
twins.
one too.
They're probably the same age.
It could be.
I'm done. I'm out.
Um, excellent. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Hey, what's
Um,
are we gonna do the opposite of this? Are you gonna do the least favorite of the TV shows?
we could. I don't have a least. Well, I guess I could probably pick one, but what is your least favorite, Tim?
Well, I'm just bringing this up because
I don't have one. No. It's like,
I
wait.
Yeah.
I've
What
been
are we
fighting to
doing?
get through Skeleton Crew today, and I did not enjoy it.
Okay.
Oh
I
my
did not
gosh.
enjoy it.
Interesting. I
Have you watched it all?
Well, I've got about 20 minutes left of the last episode.
okay.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
I I thought it's okay, but I couldn't get away from watching it and going, okay, I see what's going on. This is a Venn diagram where it's the intersection of Goonies, Stranger Things, and the pirates from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Total
And
Goonies.
and
Mhm.
I mean, they even had them sliding down different slides, like when they're
Yeah.
sliding down into the. And for me, I couldn't get away from that. Some of it was pretty interesting, and I liked sort of the setting it was in. This world that's covered in the what's it called, the protective sphere. I don't know that the ships can't get
The
through
barrier.
barrier. Thank you. And that this place was hidden, and it's where they print all the Republic credits and stuff. The background and the setting I thought was pretty cool. Jude Law was fantastic, but the kids, it was just a little too campy
Yeah.
for me.
That's probably number 3 for me.
Ah,
I love Skells, but it's okay. I will unclaimsy your comments and leave those to
I
yours.
I
that's
think
fine.
I was a U on Skeleton Crew. It started high for me. In the middle, it almost lost me, Tim. I'll be honest. I was like, okay.
Hmm.
And really the kids did a really nice job overall, but it was almost too much of like, okay, I get it. They're 10,
Hmm.
they're whiny, they're scared. but like, can we move on to the next plot point? Because I don't need to see this anymore. And then it did swing back for me. I did really like the end. I thought, like you said, Jude Law did a good, nice job.
Mhm.
I liked Skeleton Crew.
So, and I never look up anything, fan theories or anything, but anybody know, is Wim supposed to be somebody eventually? Because I
I
didn't
don't
know
think
if it,
so.
okay. I thought maybe he was going to end up being somebody in Rebels down the road or something, but
Yeah.
I like that as an open door, like it could be, because they're not going to stop making shows and movies, right? So I like that they leave themselves those kind of opportunities.
I like the fact that it didn't have to tie into the rest of the saga because so many times they can't help themselves. They just have to
Mhm.
Right.
connect the dots a little too much and it's a little too convenient sometimes. It was like a self-contained story set in the Star Wars universe, and there were like there were cool elements where they talk about, they had no idea Order 66 went down. And why is this I mean, there's so many questions. Like, why is it a forgotten planet? Was that, did the Emperor know about it? It was just a lot of cool questions that they just left open. And sometimes when they try to answer all those questions, like, what did Boba Fett look like when he was a little kid? Sometimes it kind of ruins it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it also like touched enough where it's like that is a question in the Star Wars galaxy that you may have never asked yourself, but you're kind of like, oh yeah, where did all the money come from? Where did they do all, it's like they
Mhm.
kind of still threw in a little bit of like, hey, we're still in the Star Wars universe. You want to hear something cool? You want to see a dead body? And they kind of they poked that a little bit and said, hey, we got this planet that's hidden, and that's why or that's where all the money's hidden. I found it interesting. That's all.
Some of that
It's cr
stuff, sorry, Brad, some of that stuff I think all goes back to the line, "No, I am your father." Like that connection was such a huge deal in that movie, Empire Strikes Back, of course,
Yeah,
that they can't help themselves from trying to reconnect things. And it turns out this is a word Matt and I like to use at work. It turns out being too contrived to be believable, and sometimes that pill's hard to swallow.
yeah. Brian, do you have a least favorite since we're on the topic?
um, if I had to rank them, I probably would go Book of Boba Fett
Towards
Yeah,
as
the bottom.
one of the
Yeah,
lower ones, but I
yeah.
really like um, Ming Na. Is that her name?
I think
Ming
so.
Na
Uh,
Yeah,
Wen.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
she's just super hot, so that raises it
that's
up
yeah,
in my
yeah.
book. Um, and I will say this: I like the Acolyte. And a lot of
Mm,
people did not; they shit on it, but I'm not one of them, and I enjoyed it. So that would not be um, my pick. But yeah,
agreed.
and it's not that I don't like Book of Boba Fett. I just of the stuff that I've seen and watched, I would have to say it was probably the least favorite.
yeah. Brad, you already kind of said you like everything.
Well, how far back are you guys going? Are you going back to like the old school television stuff?
Oh, he's
Like,
gonna go
because
Christmas special. He's gonna go Christmas
no,
special.
no, of the modern stuff, Acolyte was the most disappointing for me. Just in and I hate to say this, not because of what it was in the story, although there was a few like uh head jerking moments of like motivation, like questionable motivation for
Mhm.
some of the characters. Like, oh, all of a sudden I miss home. I'm gonna jeopardize this whole mission
Mm,
and go back. It's just kind of poor writing. It was fun to watch. Some of the best fight scenes in
yeah,
all of Star Wars, in my
Definitely.
opinion.
absolutely.
Some of the extraneous stuff, without getting political, some of the show writers and the showrunners, if you followed any of their like social media and stuff during the Acolyte, kind of ruined it, where
Mm,
they were like, we don't really like the Jedi. The Jedi are bad. Um, Men are bad. A lot of stuff that was like, and a lot of people said Kathleen Kennedy sort of was like, you got a great Star Wars story, now mold it into this. And she got
Mm.
a lot of hate for that. But visually, it's one of the best. Old school, I mean, if you're going back to like, I mean, there's the Droids cartoon in the 85, there was the Ewoks cartoon, there was the
Mhm.
Ewok HBO
oh
hour and a
yeah,
half long movies.
yeah.
The Ewoks cartoon old school is pretty unwatchable. I actually like droids a lot, but Ewoks was pretty bad. And try and watch those two Ewoks made for TV movies, man. Those are Wilford Brimley. That's all I gotta say.
Wilford Brimley.
Was it, sorry, this is totally off topic. Was it Thundercats that had the Robo Bears? Do you guys
Yes.
remember
Yep.
Thundercats?
Bebop or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Robo, remember the Robo Bears? That's what I
Mhm,
always
mhm.
think of. I always think of Ewoks when I see the Robo Bears from Thundercats. Like if Ewoks were robots, they would be Robo Bears. They would
And
be the Robo
they
Bears.
speak English in those movies too, which is
Yep.
really
Amazing.
yeah.
Well, they had some time. They had some
Yeah.
time.
Universal translators. Come on,
Yeah,
guys.
sure. Sure. All right, so you kind of opened it up, so I'm going to talk about Acolyte a little bit. I liked Acolyte for the most part. I agree it had a lot of issues. Um, it definitely had some consistency issues, both in writing and production. And I know there was some issues with that, with I'm sure money and time and strikes and all sorts of stuff. But that being said, are we disappointed it didn't get a second season?
I am.
I would have liked to see where it could go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't feel like the story finished.
yeah,
And so I would like to see that story finish.
Yeah, I feel like feel like they wrote it assuming that they were going to get a second season, and
for
that was
sure.
part of the mistake too, because they introduced, and I'm drawing a blank. What's the Sith character?
Plagueis,
Plagueis.
Plagueis,
Yes, Darth
Plagueis.
Plagueis. You finally got to see Darth
Yeah,
Plagueis, and
yeah.
is that all we're going to get? Like, what a shame. It's one of the best novels if you've ever read any Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
novels.
Yeah.
Darth
Hmm.
Plagueis novel is awesome. So that you just get to see him peek around the corner and you see the glowing eyes, and that's all we'll ever get. Yeah, it's a shame.
So I'm pretending I know a lot about Star Wars, basically. When we talk about Darth Plagueis, is that the one that Sidious killed to
Yes.
overtake?
Well, that's who
Okay.
he says he killed him. We
He
don't
said he
actually.
killed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the
Is
story, he isn't that the story he tells Anakin?
yeah.
That's what
Mhm.
yeah, that's what I'm
Telling
getting
the
at.
Then
Yeah.
story of Darth
and
Plagueis.
Brad, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, because I lose track when Disney took over. Is Darth Plagueis considered canon, or is that a Legends thing?
That's a good question because it was considered
Yeah.
Legends. They got rid of it, but then since that happened, since Disney took over, they've kind of been pulling and choosing certain things that like
Yeah.
uh the Zahn novel stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know what? Maybe these few characters are now going to be canon again. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be
Okay.
excised from the canon.
Okay. And I haven't read it in a decade probably, so I don't remember, but I don't think Sidious shows up in that at all.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's the word, like, to me, to a lot of Star Wars fans, I'm sure that was a big kick in the nuts. Like, hey, here's this character that's been teased and talked about, and everybody, and then, oh, by the way, you're never going to get to see him again, possibly, which I doubt that very highly. I'm sure they will bring him back somehow. They'll find a way because they got to make money somehow. Um, but I would have thought maybe give them another season, even if it's just to redeem themselves, right? If it was so terrible and it was so bad, like give them 6 more episodes. See what they can do. Let them close out their story. See if they can redeem the show.
Now, I a lot of the Star Wars podcasts I listen to, I know the general consensus was that they spent a ton of money on the
Hmm.
Acolyte, a ton, and nobody watched it.
Yep.
And that was in the end, that's why. It's like, you know what? We didn't get the return on the investment we put into it, and there was all these outside issues with the writers and the showrunners kind of
Mm.
being extra vocal that they didn't like, and it generated a lot of heat. So they're like, okay, we're done, no season two. That's what
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
heard.
but I want to see the story. None of that
Yeah,
matters to me.
it'll be a comic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so Disney Plus goes up another 249 a month. What do
Yeah,
I care?
I hear you, man.
Um, and
Yeah,
then go ahead. Sorry, Brian.
I think Carrie Ann Moss, everybody was excited about her, and then she dies in the first fight
Yeah.
scene,
Yeah.
which I obviously they brought her
Yeah.
back and they could bring her back, but um, it was just wait a minute, she's Trinity needs to be there a lot longer. What's going on? And Daphne Keene, I love that they brought her in and her character was good. We lose X-23 though, and a few, I mean, it was just there was so much good involved in it that if you take out the real world aspect of like the showrunners and the actors being idiots, it's a good show. I
Yeah.
mean, it did deserve a second season. And like you said, they wrote it so that the Darth Plagueis would be the second season.
Right.
And instead of all the stupid internet, hashtag bullcrap that came out when the first season, let's do a Darth Plagueis,
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
hashtag let's hear that story,
Well, and for good or for bad, I don't know. We talked about Brad. You talked about sometimes they try to pigeonhole everything and make it convenient. Tim used contrived. They definitely were going somewhere with the witches and the birth and the force and like they
Hmm.
were really trying. I don't know if they were trying too hard, maybe a little bit to make some things make sense. And then on the other hand, you had people, to Brian's point, on the internet going, "Oh, you can't do that. That's against everything." It's like, okay, it's Star Wars. Let's calm down.
And it's crazy too, because it's like the new villains in Star Wars since I mean, how much can you tell about the Empire, if you're trying to
Right.
go outside of that sphere? But the new villains are witches, whether it's Clone Wars and Rebels and
Hmm.
Acolyte and pirates,
Yeah.
Solo,
Right.
Clone Wars, Skeleton Crew, Galaxy's Edge. Half the stuff there is like we're doing a mission with pirates. It's like
Yeah.
pirates and witches. That's what a lot of these new shows seem to be about,
Yeah.
which I'm cool with because it's a different
Yeah. It's
angle.
something new. You know.
Yeah.
Go back to the acolyte for a second. You have a Wookiee that's a Jedi Master. Um, that's cool, and he's there for 2 seconds, and then he's gone. And it's kind of like that's a breakthrough kind of moment character wise, or I don't know if it's story wise, or kind of like the rules of Star Wars, right? Like they broke the hell out of the rules of how you use the Force in the last trilogy. Like we're sending lightsabers to each other, and we're having visions across the galaxy. So the rules get broken and whatever, but I like that little break of the rule having a Wookiee as a Jedi Knight. Matt, I think this is maybe you could use this as a transition in the conversation, but I think at one point you were going to say what's good about what all of these series and TV shows do for the overall theme and rules of the universe there, and it's one of them for me. Each one gets to take a little piece of information in this fantasy world and kind of bring it to light. And I really like that little slice of heaven in the Acolyte.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean that's what the shows get to do, right? That's what shows can do that movies can't. Movies have 2-ish hours to kind of get you through, even if it's a trilogy, then you got 7 hours or whatever it is. But a show could have 10 hours or 20 hours, or Clone Wars had 8 seasons, like they have all this time to kind of flesh out some of that stuff. So that's what I like about the TV. Movies will always be number one for me. Obviously, that's how we all started watching Star Wars, right? But TV definitely has its niche. We talked a little bit about Obi-Wan only getting a season. Does anyone else feel like they could have just done 10 episodes and just been done? I don't think they need many more, right? Like they did
Oh, Obi-Wan?
6. Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan was what it
It
was
was
called, sorry.
originally announced as a film.
Yeah, it was announced as a film, and
Yeah,
then
and then
they
they
said, okay, we're going
switched.
to do a series, and then they said, well, we're going to do a limited series, but they gave it 6 episodes.
Hmm.
I feel like if they just would have said, we'll give you 10, they could have told the whole story that they needed to tell. They don't need that many more episodes based on where it ended.
Yeah.
What do you guys think
Yeah,
about
if you
that?
do anything more with that, you're really getting into Luke and Leia growing up.
Sure.
I mean, and him learning how to commune with Qui-Gon Jinn. Like there's not much more there to tell after what happened.
And you got to be careful with that territory too, because there's such a it's like a rich history with Obi-Wan, like in all of granted, a lot of the novels and stuff were deemed legends, but it's like there's not that much time period to really.
Yeah.
Like you could do another season, I guess, but what would it be? It would be Obi-Wan watching over Luke from a
Right. And
distance,
that's what I
You
you
could
mean.
go
know?
They I don't think they need a whole nother season, but they could have
No,
thrown them 8 episodes instead of 6, and I think you could have
agreed.
wrapped everything else up really
You could go
nicely.
backwards with the second season though, because we don't know how Obi-Wan started to become a Padawan. So you
True.
could it could be reflective.
Ewan
Did they
McGregor. It's just a shame because he's so good.
Yeah.
Like he's just the redeeming factor in so many of the things that he's involved in with Star Wars.
wasn't the Obi-Wan character used in Clone Wars at some point too?
Hmm.
The
Yeah,
the
The
like
uh
cartoon
the
I'm
yeah.
cartoon.
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Obi-Wan and Anakin are
Okay.
heavily
No,
heavily.
no, I meant I know I've seen a scene on a clip or a reel. It's an older Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul and
Ah, yeah, that
cuts this.
was Rebels.
I think that's Rebels. I haven't seen it, but I remember you telling me
Yeah,
that before,
so
Matt.
yeah,
Mhm.
Darth Maul comes back in Rebels with the Mandalorians and does some stuff. It's actually pretty good stuff. But yeah, the scenes you're talking about are from Rebels, towards the end of Rebels.
I mean, that scene alone, it made me want to figure out where it is and watch it, the show, because he's like, Darth Maul puts together that Obi-Wan's watching Luke,
Hmm.
basically. He's
Yeah.
like, you're not here watching something, you're watching someone. And then as he's dying, he asks him, is he the one? Is he
Hmm.
the chosen one?
Hmm.
And he says, yes, but he's not, because Anakin's actually the chosen
Yeah. Don't start a fight. Don't start a fight. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
one.
Rebels
Listen,
Rebels is definitely, we haven't talked a lot of, I mentioned in the beginning, it's a definitely an underrated show. It started off kind of kiddish, but it gets real dark
yeah.
real quick, with Thrawn and Canon and Ezra, which we see Ezra again in Ahsoka. It's kind of interesting.
If there's a Ahsoka was awesome, but if there's a downside to it, I think it's got the highest cost of entry to just like a casual fan
Yeah,
watching it because you really to fully enjoy Ahsoka, you have to have watched a fairly good amount of Clone Wars and Rebels.
yeah,
Like, and I don't think they did a very good job of setting you up without that pre-knowledge, you know?
yeah. It's almost as
Um,
if they were just relying on the fact that, oh, if you're gonna watch this, you've already watched all this, or
mhm.
at least you have a passing interest in it and you know who the characters are.
Yeah, it's like watching some of the newer Marvel movies. Like this late in the game, you're like, ha, wait, what? Like if you miss too much.
Right, right,
Mm.
But
right.
Yeah.
So
A Rosario Dawson fan who's just watching Ahsoka. It's like, no, you got to see a lot more stuff. You can't just be a fan of hers.
what's a
yeah.
space whale? Like what's going on?
Yeah, so I watched maybe 2 or 3 episodes of Rebels years ago and then stopped. And probably for the reason you're saying, Matt, because it did kind of seem like it didn't really draw me in. It
Hmm.
did seem kind of childish. But in watching future movies and stuff, I noticed characters. In the third episode 3, for example, um, when they're doing Order 66, I'm seeing some of the Jedis that are getting killed. I'm like, oh, I think that dude was in Rebels. Um, and I haven't seen any of what else did you guys just mention? With Ahsoka, you had to see Rebels, and what was the other one?
Some of
A lot of
Clone
Clone
Wars.
Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clone Wars. So I'm only like in 3 years worth of Clone Wars, so I haven't seen a lot of that either. Having said that, having talked to you guys about a lot of this stuff, just from context of conversations I've been in, I put some stuff together while watching Ahsoka. So without seeing them,
Sure.
I'm able to put some stuff together,
Yeah.
which just kind of shows what kind of nerds I talk to on a daily basis.
Hey, no.
I will say, Clone Wars and Rebels is not only worth watching, it's worth rewatching.
Hmm.
There's always something you can take out of an episode that you didn't catch the first time, but it's just those are all fantastic.
You can also look up, I tried to do this once, the chronological watching
Hmm.
of Clone Wars, where they kind of, because not all the episodes are chronological. That's interesting. I started doing that. I got about, I'd say halfway through, and I don't know what happened. Something, life took over, and I couldn't sit there and watch TV all day. But that's an interesting thing too, to watch it chronologically. Now that it's streaming, it's very easy to just sort of pick and choose. If you just Google it, you can find it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and all the some of the later stuff was crazy in that too. Like the day in the sun, like the episode where R2 and 3PO just wander around in the desert and there's like no story. There's the Mortis trilogy with like the
Yeah.
father. That stuff is like just weird for the sake of being weird, but cool to talk about. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's something for everybody with Clone Wars for sure.
And people even have made the leap that they think they're going to bring that the father
Hmm.
daughter son stuff into Ahsoka for her
Yep.
second season. So yeah, there's a lot of deep cuts. Tim, were you going to say something?
I was. I was just gonna say, as I was looking up Clone Wars stuff today, isn't it the case that you're not supposed to watch like the last few episodes until after episode three? Like most of it's in between episode two and episode three, but it's kind of cut in between the movies at the end there. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
I haven't watched it in a long time, I'm gonna be honest.
That is correct, Tim.
Okay. And isn't that kind of with like the time that they like put them out? They were putting this show out, and then episode three
Mhm.
comes out, and then they put some more. That's probably about that, right?
Yeah, there's actually a guy I've watched it once. I have a Blu-ray of it, but it's called Revenge of the Sith, like Ultimate Cut or something. It's a total fan edit. It's not for
Hmm.
everybody, but this guy took scenes. It's basically the movie Revenge of the Sith, and he interspersed scenes from from Clone Wars and from Rebels and from Bad Batch, and
Hmm.
does them all chronologically and tells one big story. It's like 5 hours long. Um, and does like transitions where you kind of don't notice the differences. But yeah, a lot of that stuff happened after Order 66 and
Hmm.
after Yoda goes into hiding and all that stuff. Jumps around a lot, can be kind of confusing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
the order these were released and the chronological order is just so weird. Like it's kind of hard to keep track of all of it sometimes,
yeah, I can't
just
remember.
because of that.
Yeah, I can't remember if they did like arcs, and so that's why chronologically it jumped around so much. Because I don't remember, Brad, maybe you remember when they released it, did they do like a character arc and then they had to backtrack to get to other characters because things had happened along the way that we hadn't seen? I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's whole arcs of that show that are kind of flashbacks. I mean, there's stuff
Right.
when Obi-Wan and when he had the love interest and all that stuff when he's early on in his
Mm.
career, and there's like they go into the whole like Mandalore arc, which is in a different time period. But yeah, it definitely jumps all over the place. I've never done the chronological thing. That's too much Clone Wars for me.
Mm.
But
I'm not
I've
even
seen it.
referring to I'm not even referring to Clone Wars. I'm talking about the whole Star Wars universe,
Oh,
Like you get episode four, five, and six, and then start filling in stuff with books and shows, and then you get one, two, and three. Well, really, you get one, two, and then the Clone Wars, and then three in the order they were released, and now it's all over the place.
right.
So I caught up today with Andor, and not today, but the last 5 days with rewatched Andor, watched Obi-Wan and Skeleton Crew and Ahsoka. I'm like all over the place timeline wise, trying to remember, hey, like, did this happen yet or did this not happen yet? And sometimes that throws me.
Yeah, there's a guy that works for Lucasfilm. He's been there forever, named Leland Chee, and he's like the I forget his title, but he's like the story continuity guy. So from what I've heard, and it's just gotten more and more ridiculous, like when they have a series in development or a comic or a, movie, whatever, they consult with this guy and he like
Hmm.
figures out where stuff is like, but it's so all over the place now. You're like back in the day, I remember the old Dark Horse comics, like you go to the back page and it would have like where everything fit in the
Hmm.
chronology. Now you'd have to have like a 6 page fold out,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
it's
They used
crazy.
they used to
Or
do
a
I
that
couldn't
with
tell
giant
you.
the
wall, like a literal giant wall
Yeah,
with an
they used
actual
to do that with the
timeline.
novels too. If you would pick up a
Yep.
novel, the first page, it would show you where in the main
Hmm.
timeline the novel fit. I read all the Republic Commando
Hmm.
books. There's a trilogy of that, and there was something else I read, and it was nice. It was like, oh, this happened in this part, and you kind of get to know it. Um, so we're talking about all this TV. Obviously, we're big movie fans, but what other Star Wars concepts or characters or events in the Star Wars universe do we think what would make a good TV show that we haven't seen yet? Is there anything out there that they haven't really touched on yet? What's something that they could make a TV series, even if it was just a limited series? It doesn't have to be a big, long, multi-season thing, but
I think there's an obvious one out here. It's Yoda.
yeah,
And I think that's been talked about, hasn't it? And proposed, but they just haven't done it. So sooner or later that's coming out. But the origin of how Yoda gets involved with the Force and becomes the Yoda that he is, it's got to be
good one.
out there somewhere.
I'd watch that.
I think back in the day that was the untouchable for George Lucas. Not that he has a say anymore, but I
Yeah.
remember he would always say like, "We'll never, other than how old he is, we're never going to go into that. He's always going to remain." But
Hmm.
Hmm.
I'd
Mysterious.
watch it too.
I think the bounty hunters,
Hmm.
Hmm.
and I do believe there is a book series about bounty hunters out
Yeah.
there, but I think TV wise or movie wise, there could be definitely a bounty hunters.
Yeah.
Uh, also, or Jabba the Hutt, you know,
Mhm.
encapsulating it all.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the comics, one of the comic runs, they intersperse some bounty hunter storylines. I don't know if it was the Vader or Dr. Aphra, um, or one of them, but they did like a whole couple of months of bounty hunter stories.
The Mandalorian did a nice job of bringing an IG-88
True.
type character and a Bosk character,
Mhm.
or a group of them, in there. And that's we didn't say this with Mandalorian earlier, but I had an IG-88 figurine that I played with when I was a kid. It was one of the group that I played with, and I can't tell you how wrong I played with that character. I was just like, this is just a tall, linky robot that falls down a lot. And watching Mandalorian, I was like, man, was I wrong at what this thing could do? What a cool character in Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
and
I
that's
would think that would. I'd love to see more about the bounty hunters for sure.
I was gonna say that's one of the I guess that's another positive of TV. You get to explore some of those things like those one-off characters you saw in
Mhm.
Empire Strikes Back, and they all had names in the script, but we didn't know who they were, right? They were just
Mhm.
random dudes. You do get to explore that a little bit more in TV or obviously comics and stuff like that. But
I know Bosk and Dengar were in Clone
Mhm.
Wars
yeah,
in a couple
Oh,
episodes. That was cool.
okay.
I mean, it wasn't like specific to them. It's like you're right. It's neat to see that kind of stuff and delve into their backstories.
Well, thinking so there's the first six movies, and then this really explodes, right? All the series ideas and new movies coming out, and then the final trilogy, which I liked them. I get why their critics uh, don't necessarily love them, but I liked them. Um, I think one of the best ideas was the movie Rogue One to not just take a character and make a series out of it, but take how things played out and go over something that was skipped, you
hmm
know. You get to end of episode 3, Empire has taken over. Go back to the beginning of episode 4, we've stolen some plans. Let's make up a whole bunch of characters and incidents that describe how that happened.
yeah.
And they did it in such a magnificent way. Are there any other, instead of just character things, or like I was talking about the rules things that we could uncover, are there some time things that were skipped over where we could find some really cool moments? That would be what I would be trying to do if I was coming up with new ideas.
I'd like to see the Banthan spies before episode 6. That's who stole
Oh
the
yeah,
plans the
yeah.
second time. We know how they did it the first time. How did they do it the second time?
Hmm. Well, and that's cool because the Emperor ends up saying, "I'm the one that gave it to him." So I mean,
Yeah.
the bad guys involved in that, and you could see them being fooled.
I think going back before episode one would be a sweet spot for me, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Phantom Menace, but like
Hmm.
the territory of, there's just the story that he tells that we mentioned before about Darth Plagueis. Like, how does Palpatine rise to power? We know how it happens throughout the movies, but his training as a Sith and
Hmm.
leading a double life there. They could still do it at this point. I mean, they better get moving, but
You know, I don't understand the Sith enough, I guess would be the best way to put it. And I'm not a uber Star Wars fan, as Brad has self-proclaimed. But I'm pretty knowledgeable on it. But it's just like, okay, so I've always the rule of two, so there's only two Sith. But then we get into the later Star Wars movies where there's this whole colony of Sith that are there with Palpatine and who built these ships for the New Order and all that. I mean, there's a whole bunch that doesn't get explained in the final three movies. And if there's only two earlier, there's just so much that could be told about the Sith that we don't know. I mean, we could do a whole Sith series.
Yeah,
You know,
go ahead.
I was gonna say a great, and I've mentioned this to Tim before. I still gotta let you borrow it, Tim, but there's a comic series from I want to say it was the early 90s, Tales of the Jedi, and it's like the furthest back that they go in the Star Wars timeline. I think to this day, it's still like the oldest. It's like 10,000 years before A New Hope or something. And it focuses a lot on the Sith and how they're like basically like the occult. They're like magicians and they twisted the Force and came to power. And it's such a good story. There was two like multi-year runs of this comic and it's all collected, but people have been talking about that for years that they should make that into a show or a movie. It has nothing to do with any of the modern characters, but they do talk
Mhm.
about like the origins of the Sith a lot.
Yeah,
I
I
like
think
that. I like
good.
that idea, and I also have an additional comment to Brian's wanting to know more about the Sith and why they're in pairs. I'm watching stuff like Ahsoka and Skeleton Crew and seeing people using the Force that are, evildoers or bad guys or whatever. And I get that some of them are Jedi turned dark, but some of them just kind of show up and are able to use the Force. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that. Like,
Hmm.
where is that coming from if they're not Sith people? You
That
know?
all gets explained in the last 20 minutes of Skeleton Crew, Tim. So just
Damn
just
it!
watch.
Damn it! Fucking
Yeah,
pirates.
the rule of two stuff, the Bane stuff. There was a
Mhm.
couple of novelizations of that. They're really good novels. They're not canon at all, but that might be interesting. That's where that rule of two comes in. And I was thinking about the Acolyte. I wonder if the Acolyte ruined any chance, because for a while there, the High Republic was going to be the new hotness, right? They did some comic books. They did some novelizations, and that's where the Acolyte kind of came in, sort of this High Republic era. And I wonder if we kind of got it ruined now. Are we not going to see any of that because Acolyte flopped?
Hmm.
Yeah, I had heard the same thing. I have not read any of the High Republic novels. All I know is that there were a lot of them.
Yeah,
And the people that I know that have read them, it seems like they read them out of like a just out of duty that they needed to finish it, even though they weren't enjoying them very much. So
yeah,
I don't know how good the stories are there. But yeah, fertile ground for sure if you came up with a good story within that.
sure, yeah, yeah. I've seen like the collected volume of like the comics like at the library or something, and I kind of look through it and I'm like, eh, I always put it back, so it can't be that
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But as far as TV goes, I wonder if that's kind of an untapped place, or a movie. It's an untapped place, and I just wonder if Acolyte kind of set us back a couple of years on that. Just
Yeah, I don't
because.
think we're going to be seeing Vernestra a Star Wars story anytime soon.
I just again I don't see why. I think I like that story and I like that tap into that time frame, and I think they pulled the plug on that too early.
Yeah, well, and anything they can do to get away from the Skywalker saga might
Yeah,
be good for them, right?
yeah,
Because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's actually a complaint of some people, is everything revolves around the Skywalkers. Why don't you go do something different? And then the problem is they try something like the Acolyte and it flopped. Now, Skeleton Crew did fine, right? Um,
Mhm.
and that doesn't seem to be revolving around the Skywalker saga. The last 20 minutes, Tim, you just wait. It's gonna be awesome. Just open a beer and
It's it's
stop it.
I mean, watch
sorry.
it tonight.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So, all
Put
right.
myself on mute and watch it, and I'll get back to you guys in a minute.
Any
So
closing
I actually
thoughts? Go
we
ahead.
we keep talking about the Acolyte. So
Yeah.
the sisterhood of witches,
Hmm.
and again, forgive just a question. Is that the same witches that were used in the cartoons that were also around Darth Maul and such? Like,
I
The
wasn't there a
Dathomir
sister?
stuff.
Yeah, I think they're adjacent. I don't think they're the exact same, but it was definitely strongly hinted that they're sort of Dathomir witch adjacent when you say Brad. They
Okay,
kind of hinted at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't think they're the same ones, but definitely of the same
because that's where I thought it was
movement,
going.
I
Yeah.
guess.
That's where I thought it was they were going to go with it. And I was like, oh, this could.
I
And then they had the one that had like the spikes like Darth Maul, and I'm thinking,
mhm.
okay, the connection, this could be a cool connection to the future, and uh, okay, what was Darth Maul's brothers? Savage,
Savage Opress.
yeah, Savage, Opera.
Savage Opress.
Yeah. What a bad name.
Um, you
What do
know,
you think they meant by that?
yeah, I think to me, I think what they kind of missed the mark on that because I think they were so interested in trying to explain away how they could make a baby with the Force or with whatever that I think
Hmm.
they totally missed their chance because it definitely was Dathomir adjacent, but they didn't explore it at all because I think they were so hitting you over the head with, hey, look, we can make a baby in the Force, and hey, that Anakin Skywalker, like everybody, it's kind of like fourth wall breaking.
And the
They're kind of
Darth Plagueis thing too, like him making an appearance in there, that's the whole thing you want to know about him because
Yeah,
he was the one that had
right,
discovered how to create life. Well, did
yeah,
he discover that from these witches
right,
or
right.
we'll never know.
Maybe you never know.
Maybe we will.
we could
Maybe we
start a
will.
movement. Start a
Yeah.
movement right here.
Just from the sheer volume of people who are going to listen to this podcast, I think that we can influence a lot of behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
Hashtag force baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Our midichlorian count is high on this
That's
Yeah.
right.
podcast.
Whoa,
M
M count, M
M
count,
Sorry, M
counts.
M
count.
count.
Sorry.
So, all right. Any closing thoughts on the on Star Wars TV and such? Anything else for the good of the order?
I'm glad that they do it so I don't, when movies come out, I feel obligated. I got to go watch it right now. And, it's there and they kind of dictate for me when I watch these. I enjoy that I have my own time frame to watch and catch up on these shows. And like we said before, there's a lot of little things about the universe you get to pick up and learn and explore, which is great.
What is on the horizon? I mean, I know Andor season 2. What other things are in the works that you guys have heard of?
Ahsoka's getting a second season, but that's it. It only gets one more. Andor, we don't know about Skeleton Crew. I don't know, Brad, you might know more than me, but I feel like they kind of haven't said anything, which makes me think it might have a season two.
God, I
Yeah,
hope
I
not.
I don't know. I mean, there were so many things that were announced, which was the joke for a while was they would have a Star Wars celebration event, and Kathleen Kennedy would come out and we're gonna do a Rangers of the New Republic, and there's gonna be a Rogue Squadron movie, and this, that, and it's like they would announce 10 series, and you would get one of them.
Right.
And then like writers would change and like it's just yeah, no, I think finally, and I think it's a good thing. I think finally they've started to realize, hey, we need to pull back a little bit. Like we don't want to oversaturate, because for a while it's like, man, another Star Wars series. Now me, I love it. The more Star Wars, the better.
Mm.
And it's one of those rare like evergreen properties. It's been around for so long and still going. But yeah, I think they benefit from pulling back a little bit and maybe being a little more selective about what they put out there.
I think,
Um,
sorry, I was just
Mhm.
thinking, because the Mandalorian movie's coming out, that's for sure. Um,
The
so
droid
they had
movie.
talked about another season of either the Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian, however they want to do that. I know that was another one. Other than that, I don't see anything that
there's supposed to be a Ray movie, but that's not
Okay, so
uh,
I did some reading today,
TV.
before we got on, and there's supposed to be some movie or show, and you guys fill this in if you know about this. Just it's supposed to be a droid movie with C-3PO and R2-D2 and some other droid. That's a standalone movie. There's supposed to be a Ray movie. I think I read that Rian Johnson is in talks for doing episodes 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah, that's kind
Um,
of old. I don't think that's
okay,
happening anymore.
what's his name that we talked about before from Marvel had been talked about doing 3 movies. Um, and then but everything that I read was movie this, movie that, movie that. I didn't
Yeah.
see a lot about TV shows.
Yeah, and to Brad's point, it might be because they did have a pretty big burst there for a little while where they were just
Mhm.
kind of trying to churn stuff out. So maybe that's okay. Maybe
Mhm.
it's okay.
I think the Rey movie is going to happen. I think that's other than Mandalorian and Grogu, from what I've heard, that's
Yeah.
kind of the extent of what they're focusing on right now. But who knows?
All right. Yeah, Brad, you missed our movie episode, and I don't know if I know you probably listened to some of it.
I
Um,
did.
yeah,
It,
so I forget, I don't know where I was going with that, but other just that you didn't get a chance to weigh in on that, I think is where I was going with that. So
He's
if
not the host for nothing, guys. He's
yeah,
not the
yeah,
host for
yeah.
nothing.
well, I enjoyed it very much. You guys did a stand-up job.
Well, that's
Thank you.
good. We got one
Tim sent me the raw files so I could hear what you guys are doing, and
one fan.
there
All
you
right.
go. Well, hey guys, thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, thanks for
Yeah,
coming
thanks
on,
for being
man.
here,
Yeah, for
especially with
sure.
we were down in Aaron tonight, and
We were.
you came through like a champ
Awesome.
with
That
some
was
good
fun.
deep cuts.
All right. Well, unless you guys got something else, we'll close this one out. Just a reminder to everybody that we are part of the SPDM Podcast Network, and you can check out our main cast, the BTB Movie Club, where you get your podcasts from. Thanks, everybody.